Blah, 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 blah. Translation: welcome to Candid Frank Live with Aaron William Freeland and myself, Frank Stanisci. Well, I got over my first cold. You can't call it a summer cold because it was really a fall cold because it happened after September. Oh no, it was a
Fall's
summer
not
cold.
here yet.
Yeah, fall's not here yet. That's tomorrow. So it was a summer cold. See, I knew it was a summer cold. It didn't feel right. It was 30 degrees and I had this cold. How are you feeling?
I'm actually not doing too badly. Had a night out with the missus on the Monday night, so unfortunately missed the show there, and just realized today, unfortunately, my laptop is too underpowered currently to actually be able to support a camera. So there's just going to be a pulsating logo next to Frank today. I'd like to apologize to our viewers for that. It's unfortunate, but we'll try to make sure that we get this rectified for next show.
I think the admission has to be made that I'm talking to a bot.
Wow.
Hang on.
Yeah, I guess you could call me
How
that
many
for today.
bicycles are on my screen?
None.
Okay.
But if
Uh,
your mom had wheels, she'd be one.
how many circles are on my screen?
Far too many.
Okay. I see one, but I gave you the answer.
Well, I actually see three directly behind your head there, not to mention the couple on the right-hand
Oh,
side of
right.
the
Yes,
screen when I'm looking at you.
I'm calling that one, but it's really two.
Yeah.
And actually, you can call the shadow a third. So I understand. And then the shadow on the inside, you can call that a fourth. Oh
Not to
my!
mention the dotted circle that's inside the two solid
And
lines,
that's a
then the
fifth
additional dotted circle inside
on
that.
the inside. The light,
Yeah.
the
And
circle of lights.
then there's the tube inside over your left shoulder. You can see that tube
Yeah,
there.
yeah. That's kind
Uh,
of circular.
yeah.
This conversation is a bit circular.
It is, unfortunately. But what are you going to do?
So Aaron the bot and Frank the whatever. So here we are, and it's well, tomorrow is the beginning of fall, the end of summer. Um, so we're at a point in the sports world where the winter teams are starting to get their stuff together, and the summer teams, and by teams I mean leagues, are winding down. Like you know the Blue Jays, for example.
Hmm.
But let's talk about the PWHL. They had their draft. What are the highlights in the draft as far as you're concerned? This is a league, a professional women's hockey league that's trying to find success where success has eluded all attempts to create such a league.
This is the result of almost a decade, I believe, of infighting between the CWHL, the NWHL, then the the Women's Hockey, the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association, or PWHPA, and the Premier Hockey Federation. Finally, after a long time, the Mark Walters Group and Billie Jean King Enterprises decided that they were going to go ahead and partner with the PWHPA and the PHF and create the Professional Women's Hockey League. So they had their draft at the CBC building over the weekend, and it was a snake draft. So what that means is all six teams draft, and then they reverse the order and draft again. I'm actually looking forward to this. They're asking for $50 deposits for seats. I believe it's going to be an 18 to 26 game season. They haven't confirmed team names yet. They haven't confirmed arenas yet, but they are set to go. Toronto's looking a little bit stacked. I don't know if you caught the results, Frank, but we initially signed Renata Fast, Sarah Nurse, and Blair Turnbull. And then first draft pick in the draft, we picked up Jocelyn Leroc, Emma Malte, Kristen Campbell, Natalie Spooner, Jesse Comfer, Callie Flanagan, Victoria Bach, Brittany Howard, Ali Monroe, Melissa Channel, Maggie Connors, Rebecca Leslie, Hannah Miller, Alexa Vasco, and Olivia Knowles. Personally, I'm ecstatic about this. Jocelyn Leroc is a great defenseman. Kristen Campbell is a great goalie. Not to mention Spoon. Spooner, sorry, and
Yep.
Comfer, who are deliciously fast up front.
So Toronto's looking good, and
Yep.
this league is gonna. When are they gonna start their season, Aaron?
They're supposed to start in 2024, so very shortly.
All right, so it'll be in the new year.
That's the intention. Yes,
Okay, so it won't be a fall start. It'll be middle of the winter start.
something
The
like that.
new
Yeah,
year.
and because it's a shortened season, it'll fit in. So it should be
Yeah.
right after the All Star break. I think is when it's going to get going. Really,
My biggest disappointment is the history of trying to put together a women's hockey league. It has been a distraction, and really has. I think it's limited the progress of the players and the appreciation of the game that they can play. I look at if you look at the women's NBA, the WNBA, they're going through some playoffs and stuff, and the improvement year by year by year has been very noticeable. And this last set of games that I've been watching, the speed and athleticism of the women has really been enhanced, and they're becoming, basically they're becoming professional basketball players in a way that no one can deny. And for me, that's important. And I only mention that as a disappointment in hockey because the progress that they've made, while it's fantastic, a word that you like, and I like it too in this regard, it would have been much better if they could have held things together and started a lot sooner with a league that continually shows up each and every year. Um, I'm not saying this as a complaint. I'm saying this as a please make this the last time you're trying to do something for the good of the game, because that's what it would be. So we wish the PWHL unlimited success, an ability to stay viable, and to not have any financial woes, which I don't see why there should be any. And I would think and hope historically the Canadian Football League got help from the NFL. I don't see why the NHL can't step up and help this particular women's hockey league. Now that they is it safe to say there's this one league and there's nobody in the sidelines that's looking to start another women's hockey league, is there?
not as far as I can see here. And again, that's because the PWHPA and the PHF, I think, finally decided to stop fighting
And
and
I
do what's right.
Right, and I hope what I'm saying doesn't sound negative. I'd like to think what I'm trying to be is constructively critical, not destructively critical. And like I said, I prefaced it by saying the way the WNBA is being played right now, the the fantastic nature of the game, the way the ladies are playing, they're showing that given the opportunity to heighten their athleticism and their ability to be a part of a team, and a team a part of the league, it only gets better. So the ceiling for women's sports is very high, not because women can't achieve or don't have the ability to achieve. It's practice makes perfect. And that's the last thing I'm going to say. And I hope they get to practice consistently and arrive at perfection, whatever that looks like down the road.
For sure. And I know that there is a group of 6 or 7 of us that I can think of right now that are Argo season ticket holders that are currently interested in going to see PWHL games.
Absolutely, absolutely. And minor sports or sports that are of value, and we put the Canadian Football League in there, make it great if you're a sports fan and you're not flush with a lot of cash. I mean, let's be realistic here. The value of going to a Canadian Football League game. Some may question, the level of I don't know, the league, if you want, because you can't argue the professionalism of the players. You can't argue the talent of the players. And another thing you can't argue is the value of the game. I mean, for $30, you get to go watch the Canadian Football League and watch some real good pros, where you're paying 300 or 400, yes, for a more favored league like the Toronto Maple Leafs, but the excitement level, I don't think it's any different. If you really have a passion for what you're watching, This is what I'm saying about the WNBA. This is what I'm saying about college women's basketball. We saw a few weeks ago how enthralled a very large amount of people, record-breaking crowds to watch women's volleyball. So, this is all about giving people a chance to reach higher peaks, right? And I'm enthusiastic about this version of a women's hockey league because of what you said, because of what you assured me of and told me. This sounds like this could be a great opportunity for some consistency in existence and only improve the game that they play. So I repeat, it's important that and the value is going to be there, which was my point with the Canadian Football League. So yeah, a part of the reason why you can afford to go to all these different things, Aaron, is because a lot of them aren't that expensive in relation to going to, let's say, the Maple Leafs or the NBA.
Understood. I 100% get that. And again, this is the difference between actual and perceived value, right? So
Absolutely. And you know what? Actual and perceived value when you go to um, a sporting event is dictated and determined by how excited you are in the game. So you see, it doesn't matter if they're and this is the thing because I'm kind of in a position where I spent a lifetime covering minor sports, even midget hockey, all right, and high school basketball. I covered the pros. I covered world basketball. I called that. I've seen all kinds of sports, and one thing I've learned is that really what matters is what the game looks like. It's not the individual players or teams. It is the battle between the two. And if you can make that professional, and that's what I think the PWHL will do. PWHL, yeah, that's right. It
yeah,
will do. So that's what we're looking for. Let's talk about the Canadian Football League a little further and in a little more detail. The Argos have been now that they've clinched first place, they've been in the past couple of weeks been making a lot of signings.
they have. I think one of the important pieces that they needed to lock up was their general manager, the gentleman by the name of Pinball Clemens. Pinball has been a fixture around Toronto Argonauts games ever since he started with the Argonauts. And it's interesting to note that during Clemens' tenure with the Toronto Argonauts, in the seasons in which they have gone to the Grey Cup, they are 7-0. That is both with him as a player and a coach and an executive. So really glad to see that. His number 31 is just one of four numbers in to be retired by the Toronto Argonauts. I think it's absolutely great that he's here. I'm glad that he's going to be around for a little bit longer.
Class, enthusiasm, appreciation, generosity, and just generally speaking, a good man and a great leader, Pinball Clemens continues his association with the Toronto Argonauts as their general manager. And he promised when he took on the job that his team every year would be competitive and they would always be involved as a team, a serious contender for the Grey Cup. So far, each and every year, he's come through with that. And one wonders how long a run this will be and how important it is that they actually win the Grey Cup. Uh, you know, to suggest that this is an organization that deserves the attention that it gets and more. Another person has been contracted again, and that's special teams coach Donovan, a
Yeah,
guy who you know has turned this special teams from a portion of the game that the team provides as a team into something very competitive. Special teams wasn't really better than defense or offense, and I think this is the first year where I think it's become abundantly clear that the special teams have done a lot to win games that otherwise the Argos would not have won. So I guess he's being rewarded for that.
most assuredly. He is only in his second season with Toronto, but as it currently stands, the Argos lead the CFL in return touchdowns with four. field goal percentage with 92, punt return average with 15 yards, that's 1.5. Average kickoff length of 72 and a half yards, and has 2 blocked kicks to their credit. This is a team that couldn't stop anybody from running through them like running through a wet paper bag a couple seasons back, and was embarrassing to watch, and wouldn't have had the success that they'd had if it weren't for the arms that they had behind center. So
Absolutely.
now Mickey's done a lot of fantastic work with the Argonauts to actually get them turned around. He brings with him a wealth of knowledge that he acquired with Montreal special teams between 2018 and 2021. So there's that background that he's got as well. So he's no stranger to the Canadian sport, and I'm glad to see the changes that he's made.
Uh, well earned contract. Good for him. Well, let's talk about one of the reasons why he got a really good contract and why a lot of other people have gotten great contracts, including Pinball Clemens and the Castro, the center for the Argos. The Argos beat the Owls 23-20 to clinch number one in the division pretty
Yeah,
early.
and it was a late field goal by Boris Beatty, not to mention a block on a kick as well that led to this. It was an absolutely stirring finish to the game. We were both the missus and I were both just sitting on the couch. Our jaws just dropped. We were just like, oh, this is absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, you know, Toronto got its first of 5 sacks in the night and forced a two and out really early in the game. This helped set the tone for what they were doing. And here's the thing: Montreal opened the scoring with a 33-yard field goal from David Cote with 5 minutes left in the first quarter, but Toronto needed less than 2 minutes after that, I think, to score a touchdown on the next drive. AJ Ouellette punched it in with a run up the middle. He's been dynamite for the Toronto Argonauts this entire season.
Absolutely. And the Argos go to 11-1, a feat no Argo team has ever done in their 150-year history.
That is definitely quite something.
All right, let's talk about the Elks. Boy, oh boy. And the Roughies, the Elks win 36-27. My goodness, a late rally does it for them, Aaron. This Elks team is in great shape to make the playoffs. They really are. There's a shot they could do it. I know there's a lot of people saying, come on. Well, they're right where Hamilton was last year at this time of the year.
At,
Last
at, at this point, they need to catch Saskatchewan at 6-7. Edmonton is currently at 4-10. I think it's still doable. The Roughies are at 6-7. They're the next target. You know, the fact that they rallied late to beat the Roughies 36-27 is a good indication that disastrous 0 start might have been a little bit of a fluke.
Absolutely. Well,
So
we witness and we talk about the difference between winning and losing, and we could argue about it for about 5-10 minutes, because then once we go through the scores of games, we will see it proof that teams that are on bad runs, it's a lot of times because they just look at Ottawa. Let's use them as an example, because like I said, they lose 41-37 to the Lions. They just can't hang on to a lead, and they don't lose by a lot, but they always lose by enough. And that's the difference between winning and losing. A field goal makes a difference. With the Argos winning all their games, if you look at the Argos record based on what the score was in the last, at the point of the last 5 minutes, the Argos would be a 50-50 team, and this is why sports is so interesting. I like the Elks and what they've done, and they've gone through hell, Aaron, and they deserve this success. They have learned to win, and that's not easy.
yeah, it's the hallmark, I think, of developing and good, if not great, teams is their ability to manufacture wins. when it looks like all hope is lost.
Yeah.
That ability to just pull it out when they need it is what definitely defines them. Uh,
N Now, if I don't say this, I start with this comment, blah, 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 blah. Ticats win 29-23. You look at the game, you see how the Blue Bombers, lose, and they just can't seem to beat what I was gonna say to start, is that if you stand back and go, "When was the last time the Blue Bombers beat the Ticats in Hamilton?" Been a while, and it's been longer. They've got their number at home, except for the Grey Cup game, of course.
every once in a while, those outliers will happen, just to remind us that sports aren't always predictable. But yeah, with three second half interceptions, I think at this point the Hamilton defense has kind of sussed out the Blue Bombers offense. So who's remind me again who was the Ticats defensive coordinator?
Uh, oh, geez. Hang on, hang on.
Sorry, not trying to put you on the
No,
spot.
no, 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 no. He came from BC, Washington, isn't it Washington?
There
Let
we
me.
go. Yep, I think
I
that's the
think it's
guy.
Washington. Yeah, he came from BC, I think. But anyway, yeah, he's a really good defensive coordinator, of course. Has a long history of being a defensive coordinator. This guy's not a rookie. He's a pro. He's an experienced professional coach, and he's done a marvelous job. But I think the most important thing, a subject that I love talking about, and I've come to realize and believe wholeheartedly, that while the quarterback stirs the drink, a lot of times, as long as it isn't sour, they can win. In other words, it's up to the quarterback not to lose the game. The Hamilton Tiger Cats have a kid in Powell who doesn't lose the game for his team. And that, I think, is the key, because the defenses in the Canadian Football League, up and down the league, are so good. And if a quarterback makes a mistake, they can win very easily. And so it means the quarterbacks have to be ball secure, ensure they can hang on to the ball, make sure they don't give the ball away, and record some offense and move the team a little bit to help the defense to be able to defend. We're talking about Washington. You need the team to move the ball once in a while to ensure that they don't, it's not a field goal. Okay, they're so far up the field, they can either get a field goal now or a touchdown in a little bit. Remove those opportunities. And Hamilton has been a team, something they haven't been, when they lose, they're not. And so far, they've got some great leadership under center. Um, Milanovic is one of the best coaches in the history of the game. Anybody who doesn't realize or believe that um, hasn't been watching, football in the Canadian Football League for the last 10, 12 years. So, he won a Grey Cup in 12. He won in 17. He's a great coach, and this is what, makes a winner. And I think he's a winner, and Hamilton's got themselves a good offensive coordinator.
And you know what? His 11 years in the league has definitely served him well, both on the East Coast and the West Coast. And I think the fact that he's been able to help Hamilton adapt to all of the different Western offenses that they faced, because their record against other West teams is good as well. And I think that's in no small part to his experience with the BC Lions and having to deal with them.
Absolutely. And then we've got, I alluded to the Lions and the Red Blacks. The Lions made a comeback. Whitehead Hall's in the big game winner, and once again, Ottawa snatches a loss from the jaws of victory.
Yeah, and you know what? It was a technically speaking, it was a one-score game at the end of it, and 22 seconds left in the game. The Red Blacks were leading. The Red Blacks were leading. Sorry, 35 or sorry 34 to 37 to 34, and to lose like that with a touchdown just 22 seconds left in the game, that's got to be heartbreaking. But
Yeah,
it shows that, I mean, the Red Blacks are still a young team. They still have a long way to go. Um, I'm sure that in the next couple of years they're going to return to prominence. They're going to get better. They can't be this consistently bad for so many years in a row,
they did
right?
not score in the fourth quarter.
I
They did not score in the fourth quarter at all. And that's the issue. Their inconsistent offense, their inability to do what they did when Crump uh, join them, able to snatch victory from the jaws of loss. Right? They haven't been able to do that other than the first two games that he played. He has not found a way to help his team win. Is it his fault? That's not what I'm saying, but I am saying that he hasn't been the reason they've been winning, and he's a big integral part of making that happen. Well, the Canadian Football League, we're in the dog days of the season. Of playoff positions, as we talked about, are very important, Aaron. And this weekend's going to be a great game where Hamilton's coming into Toronto, and you might hear some Argos suck. You just might, because those Hamilton fans are feeling a little cocky.
they're definitely feeling their oats. So we'll
Good
have
for
to
them.
make sure
Good
we give them a warm welcome.
Good for them. It's nice to see. I mean, I love the relationship between Hamilton football and Toronto football. It's it's gotten out of hand, of course, at times, and it does. But the excitement that's generated along that QEW for all the fans who live along the QEW, and some who don't even live along that area, who live elsewhere, this is a big game every time it's played. So I'm looking forward to a lot of fun on the weekend. 7 o'clock at BMO. Hamilton invades Toronto. It'll be a lot of fun. Let's talk about the Blue Jays. And, this is a team that can't beat the East. And if they're going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to beat the East. And so far, they've really had a change of personality, one that they changed earlier with Boston, and they've continued that trend after really starting, what was it, 0-7 with Boston. They turned around and won 3, and now they've won 3 again, and they beat the Yanks in their first game 7-1. Aaron, what do you think of the Blue Jays? They're in a driver's seat. What do you think of their chances of making the playoffs?
Honestly, at this point, as a Blue Jays fan, I'm really hoping that it continues. But similar to the Toronto Maple Leafs, watching this team is frustrating because they should win. In your heart of hearts they should be winning,
Oh, my
but
good.
they're not. We thought they'd solve the runners in scoring position issue that they had early in the season. It turns out not. But I mean, Springer had a good 34th birthday. I'll give him that much. He managed to
Absolutely.
lead off with a homer. Unfortunately, Davis Schneider, the mustachioed madman that many have anointed the next savior after the fall of Alek Manoah, has cooled off a little bit. Um, he's gone hitless in his last 5 games, reaching base just twice in 21 different trips to the plate, once by an
Yep.
error and once by getting hit. I mean, it's not disastrous, but
No.
it's also not particularly surprising. I mean, no one here, at least, and no one that follows stats is under any delusion that he is the next king of SWAT. He's good, but he has to be placed in the right situation using analytics.
Yes, and confidence, is something that has to take over after you have desperation or initial success. It is one of those things. And the Jays have needed to let George do it for a long time. Well, George did it last night. Good for him. As you said, Davis Schneider is not has hit a flat spot. We'll see if he can find his stroke again. We'll see if he does. And Blue Jay fans won't and don't forget what happened last year against Seattle, and they can't forget. This Blue Jay team has to play well when it matters, and right now is a preview of when it really matters. And when it really matters is getting to the playoffs and winning that first series, because winning that first series, which is a short one,
Mm-hmm.
puts you into the situation where now we're going to find out how good you are as a team, because right now it's just a question of getting to the playoffs, and as a team they can do that. But then they're going to depend on players who they've signed to win the big games to actually do that. So there's that little hump that they couldn't get past last year, which is the key guys who get because your choices for players is limited because of the amount of games, where your whole lineup doesn't really matter as much as your core lineup. And their core lineup is going to get a chance maybe this year again, depending on how well their lineup does against the Eastern Division. The Yankees are a tough team. Let's not forget they were 24, I think, of 27 or something in their last 27 games. So they've been hot. This victory that they had to start the series against the Yanks is a big deal.
Yeah, it's definitely something that the Yankees weren't expecting. I don't think they expected to get jumped the way that they did. So it was good to see the Jays come out of the gate hot against them in that regard. But it's a question now that we've got them back on their heels, can we keep them back on their heels? So we'll be looking forward to seeing how that pans out tonight.
Absolutely. Let's go over to hockey. We talked about baseball, and it's heading towards the playoffs. Hockey's up to exhibition season. They just had their little let's check out our youngsters and how well they can do tournament. The Leafs are happy with their draft picks, happy with their depth as far as young players is concerned. They had some success. But tell us about the summer roundup for the NHL and this offseason. Let us know where you're at. What do you see?
All right, so let's try to get through some of what's gone on here. There have been some big names that have switched teams so far. One of the biggest ones is Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's gone from Winnipeg to Los Angeles. Tyler Toffoli got traded to New Jersey. Taylor Hall went from Boston to Chicago as part of a salary dump, of all things. Alex DeBrincat um, he went from Ottawa to Detroit and signed a 4-year extension there. Alex Killorn took a 4-year deal with Anaheim. Dmitry Orlov took a 2-year deal with Carolina, and Blake Wheeler, Max Pacioretty, and Matt Duchene all took 1-year deals with New York, Washington, and Dallas, respectively. The Maple Leafs got Austin Matthews locked up for long term. Ilya Sorokin is with New York Islanders for 8 more years. Sebastian Aho got the biggest total contract of the offseason currently at $78 million. Troy Terry got picked up by Anaheim for 7 seasons. Vince Dunn got 7.35 million per season after having a fantastic year last year. Um, Tom Wilson signed a 7-year deal in Washington, and Brandon Hagel is sticking around with Tampa Bay. As it currently stands, though, the team that I think has picked up the most is going to be the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not only because they added Carlson, but because they got Kyle Dubas. They extended Tristan Jerry. They got Ryan Graves to eat minutes, and they bolstered the bottom 6 with Lars Ellers and Nola Chari. Jason Zucker is going to be missed, and Jake Gensel's injury doesn't help. But they took a chance and actually managed to make themselves look more solid. The team that looks like they're on their heels at this point here is Boston, because Patrice Bergeron has retired. David Krejci has decided that he's also done. They didn't manage to retain Orlov and Bertuzzi, and Brad Marchand is now their captain. So
Are you
there's
surprised? I'm not.
no, not really. I mean, you kind of expected it to be coming,
He's
right?
earned that position for them.
I mean, there are some folks that have been left out to dry as well. In particular, Steven Stamkos, whose contract is up this year, wasn't
Oh, he's
tendered
wondering what's
anything.
going on there.
Oh,
And he's saying there's no talk about the contract. He's really concerned.
no, for sure. Drafted first overall in 2008. That's 15 years now. He's
Yeah,
in
and
the
that's what we're
final year.
talking about here. Oh,
Yeah, wow. He's in the final year of an
he's not getting an
$68
8-year
million dollar
contract,
contract.
Aaron. He's not
Nah.
getting an 8-year contract. He might get a 2-year contract, and 3 will be extremely generous. And that's if the money is not that much. He is on the downside of his career. He is not. He's not a $10 million player. He may have been before. He's not anymore. And the reality is, and this is the thing with the Wilson signing in Washington. He's going to be like 38 or 39 when that contract ends. Was a 7-year contract that he signed.
Yeah, 8-year extension. Yeah. Sorry, 7-year extension. Yeah, with
7 years.
Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to be something like 38, and a guy who's as pugilistic and who relies and depends on his physical stature. No, you don't do that, but we're gonna find out, I guess, in 7, 8 years if I'm around.
Well, and
Um
I think a lot of GMs have said though that they're not so much worried about years 5, 6, and 7 of the contract. They're more worried about years 1 through 4. After that, it becomes either a cap dump or somebody that you hide on long-term injured reserve. Speaking of long-term injured reserve,
mhm.
Jake Muzzin, who hasn't played since October 17th last year, he's currently in the final year of a 4-year, $22.5 million contract. What that means is they're going to be taking his 5.625 million cap hit and putting it on long-term injured reserve. News also came out that Murray is going in for significant surgery, so we're not going to be seeing much of him for the foreseeable future as well, which is, I think, just as well. There were a lot of Maple Leafs fans who weren't happy with the pickup, and having him run in tandem with Samsonov and whatnot, having his $6.25 million on the long-term injured reserve is going to help the Leafs significantly in the next couple of years.
If they didn't have him on their team, it would even be more helpful. But that's the issue is you can't get rid of a guy like that. And
Nope.
the other thing is he has injury issues, and I think he's only played about a handful of games the last 3, 4 years, and so, he's not a good health risk. But he did in the playoffs, remember? He was a backup. He was healthy enough to be a backup.
Yeah, he was. I'm not sure if I would have been more comfortable with Shalgren or Wall backing him up to the detriment of the Marlies, but it is what it is. You have to try to make do with the players that you currently have. So
We talked about Marchand being the captain of the Boston Bruins. Good for him. Let's talk about the Habs. We haven't heard anything about the Habs and the Canucks. They made a trade.
yes, they did. This I think is to benefit both. I know a couple weeks back we had mentioned a surfeit of goalies, an overabundance of goaltending talent that was currently sitting around the NHL because a lot of teams were sitting with 3 or 4 goalies. So as it turns out, the Montreal Canadiens have acquired something they feel that they need in forward Tanner Pearson and a 2025 third-round draft pick from the Vancouver Canucks in return for their fourth goalie, Casey DeSmith. So we know Price isn't coming back anytime soon, but they do still have a couple goaltenders in the hopper that they can use. Glad to see DeSmith going to where he might actually get some ice time. DeSmith was a first round pick by Los Angeles in 2012, and he won a Stanley Cup with them in 2014. So the pedigree is there. It's just getting back there with another
Yeah,
team.
that's really important. Let's talk about what's going on in the political world, and let's start with Canada and Canada Post breaking law by gathering info from envelopes, parcels. Says a lot.
The current federal privacy watchdog says Canada Post is breaking the law by taking information from the outside of envelopes and packages to help build marketing lists that it then rents out to businesses. The commissioner found that Canada Post had not obtained authorization from individuals, namely us, to indirectly collect personal information.
Right.
This amounts to a violation of Section 5 of the Privacy Act. So the commissioner, and this is Philippe Dufresne, has recommended Canada Post stop using and disclosing personal information in this way until it can seek and obtain consent from Canadians. I know they're not going to be getting it from me because I have enough junk mail coming through my inbox every day.
There you go.
I don't need more physical mail unless it's coupons that I can actually use.
There you go. What's this about a new party in the works?
Yeah, there's a New Brunswick independent member of Legislative Assembly by the name of Dominic Cardy. Uh, he had originally founded a group called the Center Ice Canadians. They announced that they were planning to form a new political party called the Canadian Future Party. They decided to change their name because Center Ice Conservatives wasn't testing well. They are still aiming to be a conservative party, but they thought that the Canadian Future Party was a better idea. There are a group of moderate Tories who have basically been rejecting the narrative put forth by the current leader of the Canadian Provincial Party. Uh, the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre. He says their new party plans to hold a leadership convention in 2024 and hopes to run a slate of candidates whenever the next federal election rolls around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Uh, looking more like Italy, less like the US. Canada in early stages of diplomatic tension with India. Trudeau's been making noises about the assassination of the prime minister and suggesting that we know what happened.
Well,
Is that part of the issue here?
there was a Sikh leader who came over to Canada and became a Canadian citizen in the mid '90s. He was part of a Khalistani group that was seeking an independent state for the Sikh nation.
Hmm.
Um, he was labeled a terrorist by the government of India at the time, but I think the issue that is more concerning to me at this point is not that uh, he is a terrorist. There is no doubting his links to groups that committed acts of terrorism in seeking freedom for the Sikh people in India. It's the fact that a Canadian citizen was murdered on Canadian soil by allegedly a foreign government, and that is a bit of a concern. Now, India has, of course, responded in level-headed fashion by expelling the Canadian ambassador and given him 5 days to leave the country. Um, but yeah, Nijar was shot outside his Gurdwara in Surrey, BC, back on June 18th. Other members of the Sikh community have accused the Indian government of being behind the killing and attempting to silence voices advocating for an independent Sikh country. So, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said that the RCMP has a plan to look after members of Canada's Sikh community. Um, Now, this accusation of India as an assassinatory country didn't come as a surprise. It comes as a surprise, obviously, to us, but our international partners knew about the situation and knew about the accusations several weeks ago.
Fair enough. More news from our relationship in India. Hardeep Nijjar, tell us about him.
So this is the individual that was assassinated on Canadian soil back in June. Now he was actually having weekly, almost bi-weekly meetings with CSIS concerning threats that had been made against him and threats on his life. These meetings had started in February and it had increased in frequency in the following 3 or 4 months. Um, he said that the son of Hardeep Singh Nijjar said that and this is Balraj Singh Nijjar said that his father had been meeting with CSIS once or twice a week concerning threats to his life. So CSIS was aware, the RCMP was aware of him living in Canada. They know about his history. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that they were able to protect him sufficiently in this particular case.
Let's talk about Randy Hillier of Freedom Convoy fame.
Yes, Randy Hillier, former Ontario MPP, is back in court seeking a location change for his Freedom Convoy jury trial. He's arguing that the widespread opposition against the protest could lead to an unfair trial if his case is heard in the city. Well, you done committed the crimes there, Randy. Therefore, that's where it should be. I I have very little sympathy for Randy at this particular point in time. He has made his own bed, and thus shall he lie in it.
Corporate ethics czar investigating Levi Strauss over alleged links to forced labor. Who and why is this going on?
Well, Canada's corporate ethics watchdog has launched an investigation, uh, apparently over allegations that Levi Strauss Canada is working with companies that use forced labor in China. Sherry Meyerhofer, the ombudsman, for responsible enterprise, is looking into whether the denim company has supply relationships with Chinese companies that source materials from Uyghur people forced to work in the Xinjiang region. So there is a larger connection here. Now, Levi Strauss obviously denies the allegations, saying that that allegation is based on outdated and inaccurate data. The company did not make itself available for an initial assessment meeting and did not provide information verifying its response to the allegations, the ombudsperson's office said. But given the company's limited participation in the complaint process, the watchdog said it may consider whether the company is participating in good faith at a later stage in the process. Now, these stem from a complaint made in June 2022 by a coalition of 28 civil society organizations. They initially took their complaint to Levi Strauss in November and said that they never received a response.
As far as energy is concerned, as far as the Russians are concerned, their big business is selling oil. Europe is trying to step away from that. Romania is talking to us Canadians, working out a nuclear deal. We're revisiting that, and that's becoming something that's been reinvented, if you will, to the extent where it's not as unsafe as it was in the past, or as devastating an issue.
Yeah, this is first and foremost about energy security, not just for Romania, but for that entire area.
Europe, yep.
Romania already has an agreement with Moldova to share some of the power from two new Candu reactors, which are expected to be online by 2032. So it's a ways off. But the two new reactors were going to join two existing Candu reactors that have been working there since 1996 and 2007. Those two reactors supply about one fifth of Romania's electricity, and the two new ones will be of a similar size. So they're definitely trying to wean themselves off it. Um, Canada and Germany also have an agreement to ship Canadian hydrogen. Nuclear
Ah,
power is diversification is not necessarily a bad thing.
hydrogen's something that even cars they're talking about
Mhm.
making cars work with hydrogen. I mean, we're still, as far as electric cars are concerned. I'm sorry to interrupt the stories that you're doing here, but I find that my history tells me, my experience tells me, we're at the beta VHS situation when it comes to cars and making them run. I really believe, I don't know if which is the beta, which is the VHS, but I think that's going to be a repeat of history where there's going to be a format to make cars run without gasoline. And there will be the VHS version and there will be the beta version. And, just to be clear, the VHS and beta versions, it didn't relate to the fact that one was better than the other, because beta, by many estimations, was the better format. But for some reason, I guess economically speaking, VHS became more popular, and we may see a repeat of that depending on how cars work. And I know that this is the beauty of humanity and the intelligence of humans. Make fun of how dumb we can be as a group, how stupid we can be in groups, right? But the brilliance of humanity and the genius of humans can be popularized almost as much as political popularism, if you follow what I'm saying. All that we need to do is to show people, just like what happened with VHS and beta, let them compete and let's see which system works better. And free enterprise will make that determination. That's what happened with that. And because I'm not sold completely on the way electrical cars run today, I don't think that's the final answer, Aaron.
What? No, but it's certainly a good interim solution for sure.
Absolutely.
Whether or
Absolutely.
not hydrogen takes over as the dominant source in the future remains to be seen. Natural gas and propane were supposed to be the saviors of the gas industry as well, and
And
that
corn. And corn.
well, yeah, and
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 oil, fried
yeah,
oil.
yeah. And that yellow stuff that grows in Saskatchewan.
Well, I mean, the good news out of all of this, though, is that Canada is going to be expanding their can-do footprint when it comes to energy.
And you see,
Uh,
that's what's old is new again.
and Ukraine, Poland, and Finland were also among the countries that were there for the Canada-Romania nuclear deal signing on Tuesday. So, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Back in the 70s, Romania made a choice to go with Canada's version, and that has helped them stay relatively energy independent. They still rely on Russian-based supplies for
Oil
sure,
and
but it's
gas,
made it a lot easier.
propane,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Um, we still got a little time left. Let's talk about most Canadians' view about Online News Act is news should be free. Survey suggests so. Canadians aren't liking. I guess is that what I'm hearing?
Well, basically what they're saying is, and a lot of people are misinterpreting this, but basically when Bill C-18 was introduced, it was designed to tax companies that were taking Canadian news and not paying taxes on it. Now, in this recent poll, as you know, Meta, Facebook, and Instagram banned news on their websites. Um,
Canadian,
However, Canadian
Canadian.
news, yes. 59% of the respondents to this poll agreed that the company should restore access to nudes, and only 12% agreed that Meta should be allowed to protest the legislation. So there's an interesting switch. There isn't a lot of opposition to the bill itself. There's opposition to the fact that people can no longer get their news wherever they want or however they want. The other thing that came out of this was that 2 out of 3 Canadians think that news should be free and accessible to anyone. And
Right.
struggling media have other ways to make money. Obviously, that's through ad sales.
Well,
Now, the group that was leading this was 18 to 34-year-olds, interestingly enough. And I think it's interesting, that they would seek to, that they're aware of the fact that Canadian newsmakers need to sell ads. They just thought it was okay for Facebook and Instagram and Meta to steal that and make more money off it because of their own ads.
well, we're having an issue here locally where I am,
Hmm.
where the Toronto Star Simcoe, they've gone bankrupt. They've gone belly up, and this is happening even in Hamilton, where their newsroom now is not going to exist to save money on rent. It's going to disappear, and I I am I am nervous about the situation because I'm too old. And the reason I say I'm too old is I'm accustomed and I understand about the print media, radio news, television news, and I'm not as well versed in finding news on the internet. I can do it. I get frustrated sometimes when I see a story that's not a just an innocuous story where I want to post it on Facebook and it says, "Sorry, we don't allow that anymore." They still allow sports stuff to be shared, from what I've noticed, and what I've experienced. But Aaron, local news is scary when it doesn't exist in my mind. Local news is something that scares me because we're losing that. And that's the scary thing. Over here we had a newspaper, now we have a newspaper that I write articles for, but I don't get paid. The newspaper doesn't pay people.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, um, what does that mean? What does it mean if newspapers can't be self-supporting, and if people who want to be professional news writers or who come out of school wanting to be news reporters, they don't have anywhere to do that when I believe it's an important function in society. I don't know.
Well, and the issue that we're running into here is that Metroland said that the decision was because of unsustainable financial losses stemming
Right.
from changing preference. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, Frank, but stemming from changing preferences of consumers and advertisers is certainly in quotes. The media industry continues to face existential challenges, largely
Absolutely.
because digital tech giants, insert name of offending companies here, have used their dominant position to take the vast majority of the advertising revenue in Canada. The decline of the print and flyer distribution businesses was also significantly accelerated by COVID and by the reduction of flyer usage both by readers and advertisers as a marketing vehicle. So a
And the
lot of these
ability to
places.
compete. And the
Mhm.
ability to compete too, right?
Now, the Hamilton Spectator, Peterborough Examiner, St. Catharines Standard, Niagara Falls Review, Welland Tribune, and the Waterloo Regional Record will continue both in print
Excuse
and
me.
online. So there is some hope there in that regard to continue to get print media. But unfortunately, it's leading to the loss of about 600 odd jobs, or about 60% of Metroland's total workforce, which is just absolutely devastating for the business.
I look at them as a conscience,
Mhm.
that's how I see local newspapers, local news. It's the conscience of either politicians, business, it's the first line of defense to ensure that the rights and expectations of people are kept, and like I said, I'm qualifying what I'm saying by the fact that I'm not a new age person. I'm a senior. What do I know about what do 20 somethings need in regards to news and the knowledge of news? Do they find it? Do they find it credibly, or is it unfortunately incredible? This is the concern that we have. I guess being old school, I was led to believe in my youth, in my younger days, that newscasters were unbiased. Is that true in the context of looking at it today back rather than there forward? There is a debate. So I wish these local newspapers and these local people that are there who care about what's going on in their community, they're going to have to do it for nothing. And to me, that to me it just seems unfair. I'm not pushing for myself because it really doesn't matter to me. As I said, I'm a senior, and I enjoy what I do, and I do it because I love the community I'm in, and I don't mind talking about the community. And I'm not here to promote or do anything as far as politics are concerned. I have my opinions, I've shared them, but when it comes to that stuff, I'm here to say hello to the community, and I'm a promoter of volunteers. I love volunteers, and that's the segue that I'm making. And volunteers are going to be the people who help us with understanding what's going on in our community more and more.
Yeah, I have a feeling that when it comes to news media in the future, it's going to be more and more driven by individuals who seek to just get the information out there without bias
Which
and
doesn't
without slant.
strengthen their credibility, right? Because, their credible leg, they're basically a unipod, a because they don't have the two legs. They don't have, here's what I'm saying, and this is why you can believe me. It's here's what I'm saying. That's just the way it is, I guess. Well, anyway, Aaron, this was fun. Thank you, sir.
Not a problem, Frank. We'll get those tech issues, like I said, solved for next week to make sure this doesn't happen again.
For Aaron the Bot, I'm Candid Frank. Thanks for watching Candid Frank Live.
You can't